Hey guys, welcome to Books Amaze. I am Avni, and we all know that writing a book is not a piece of cake. It takes lots of efforts and lots of research to weave an interesting story. But that's not actually the end of story. Sometimes what follows afterwards is even more challenging than writing your story, which is to sell your story. And today I'm going to talk about 10 such brilliant authors and their books which are extremely popular today, but they had to face lots and lots of rejections before their first book was published. So let's get started with this list. I can't think of any other book to start this list with other than my favorite, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. We all are aware of the massive success of Harry Potter books, but do you guys know that J.K. Rowling had to face 12 rejections before her first book, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, was published by Bloomsbury Publications in UK. But even with that, Bloomsbury Publications asked J.K. Rowling not to go with her original name, which is Joanne Rowling, but to give some sort of initials because they thought that young readers, especially boys, would not like to read a book which was written by a female. And hence she decided to go with the name J.K. Rowling instead of Joanne Rowling. But Harry Potter broke all the records and made Joanne Rowling a billionaire, which shows that if you have a good story, people will read it. The second book in this list is Immortals of MELUHA by Amish Tripathi. This amazing blend of mythology, adventure and creativity was loved and even loved till date by Indian readers. But as per publishers, this was a religious book and didn't have sufficient elements to interest young readers and hence was rejected by many. In fact, the author himself once said that I stopped counting after 20 rejections, but his belief kept him going. He later on self-published the book, which broke all the records, became this sensation, selling over more than 1 million copies and became a national bestseller, whose rights were later on purchased by Dharma Productions as well. My third book is Animal Farm by George Orwell. In fact, on my channel, Animal Farm was the very first book that I reviewed. When I first read this classic dystopian fable by George Orwell, I just fell in love with the story and the writing. But this classic was once called dull, obvious and boring and was rejected by 4 publishing houses. And finally, Secker and Warburg published it in 1946, where it sold more than 20 million copies. This political satire, which explained the ironies of Russian Revolution through simple farm animals, is now recognized as a work of great social and political significance. The fourth book in this list is Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, and this book is no doubt amongst my top 5 favorite books. That innocence, courage, optimism in Anne Frank and her writing at such a young age, and especially during her days at concentration camps by Nazis, was super amazing to read. And apart from its beautiful writing, this book is definitely a valuable piece of literature as well. But it also had to struggle with 16 rejections before making it big. Fifth book in this list is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. More than 50 million copies of this book are sold till date. But this book was also once rejected by almost all of the major publishing houses on the ground of being controversial, vulgar and revolting. Finally, Olympic Press decided to publish in the year 1955. And then it became one of the best works in erotica literature. Although many readers admit that this book made them very uncomfortable and awkward, but then there are also many readers who call this book a masterpiece. Whichever side you may be, but you can't deny the fact that it pushed ahead the boundaries of what acceptable literature can be. And that's what makes it a classic. Sixth book in this list is Life of Pi by Jan Martel. This book won the Booker Prize Award, which was once rejected by 5 major publishing houses in London. And this amazing fantasy adventure became even more popular after its famous movie adaptation Life of Pi. Imagine if Jan Martel would have given up on his dreams, we all would have been deprived of such an amazing story. The next book in this list is Twilight or Twilight as you call it by Stephanie Meyer. Although I personally am not a Twilight Saga fan, but I can't deny its huge popularity and fandom. This vampire world which Stephanie Meyer created was also once rejected by 14 publishers. But once it found a publisher, the book sold 17 million copies. It became a sensation and grabbed a place in New York Times bestsellers list for 91 consecutive weeks. Now that's a huge success. The next book in this list is The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. I don't think there's anyone on this planet who is not aware about Jungle Book. We all have grown up reading and watching stories of Mowgli, this human baby who was raised by a pack of wolves. And the credit for the story goes to Rudyard Kipling. But this adventure book also had to face many rejections. In fact, one editor went ahead to claim that Mr. Rudyard Kipling don't know how to use English language. But finally, this story also went into the right hands, and thanks to that publisher for making all of our childhood awesome. The next book in this list is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, and this is the book in this list with the highest number of rejections. This book had to face 38 rejections. But once it was published, it was later on awarded with the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1937. This story, set during the Civil War, became even more famous after its Hollywood adaptation, which is apparently one of the movies which is the highest grossing films of Hollywood of all the time. And I would like to end this list with an Indian writer who shook the reading world and became famous later on for many good and bad things. I am talking about Chetan Bhagat and his first book, which was also later on adapted into a movie, 3 Idiots. This story of an Indian engineering boy was once rejected by a very famous publishing house, stating that the story is not promising and the language is not correct. Later on, Chetan went to their rival publishing house, Rupa Publications, with a marketing strategy, and they decided to give it a go. And the rest is history. Mass sales for books were never heard before in India at such a large scale. And the person who rejected his story first later on went ahead and wrote an article on the Open magazine with the title, "The One Mistake of My Life." So these were those 10 books which were once or many times rejected by publishers, but the authors didn't give up on their story. I've already made detailed reviews for some of the books mentioned in this list, such as Diary of a Young Girl and Animal Farm, etc. So please go ahead and check them out. They are all spoiler free, and I'm sure these stories must have inspired you. And if you also have a story, do not give up on it. And if you have liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share and subscribe to my channel, and also please do comment below which of the books that I mentioned are your favorites. I'll sign off now, but I'll see you soon with another video. Till then, take care of yourself and keep reading.